2023 PC meeting. Has everyone had opportunity to review it? And any comments, corrections, edits?
I found no misspellings and no inaccuracies, so I'm good with it.
Okay. Same here. Anyone else?
Same here.
I'm good with it.
Okay, yep, good job, Britt. So let's, do we have a motion to approve the minutes as written?
Motion to approve the minutes as written, or did you already make that? Because I'll second if you did.
Nope, you can make that motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
I'll second.
Okay,
Perfect.
Whoever wants to.
whoever wants to. Okay. I think tie goes to Linda.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have any public comment on non-agenda items, anything that's not on the agenda? I think the only public I see here is Lori Wingate, is that correct?
That's the way it looks.
Okay, so having heard no public comment on non-agenda items, we'll move on. We have 3 discussion items this evening. The first one is the Wingate subdivision variance pursuant to the Nederland Municipal Code 17-111. And I think, Miranda, there you are. Why don't you go ahead and introduce this discussion item?
All right, good evening. So tonight before you is a request for variance pursuant to Nederland Municipal Code 17-111. And specifically, this is in regards to the Mary Wingate subdivision. So I'd like to give just kind of a history of the Mary Wingate properties and that connection to town. And then I'll dive into our ask before you, which is a variance in the subdivision process. So on September 14th, 2000, the town of Nederland had entered into an agreement with Mary Wingate related to the transfer of property, some of her property, to the town. We did attach that agreement to the board packet so you can see it. She is the owner of a series of parcels along the Peak to Peak Highway. In that agreement, Mary had agreed to transfer some parcels of land under both a purchase agreement as well as a gifting agreement. So obviously under the gifting, that parcel was just being given to town, and under the purchasing, there was an arrangement to pay Mary for the parcel, and then once completing all of the payments, that would then come to town. However, Mary unfortunately passed away in 2020 before the end of that agreement, but in her will, she noted that she was waiving all of the town requirements to pay the remaining balance on the leased parcel, and therefore was really gifting the remainder of that to town. In order for town to take on these parcels and change ownership, we really need to go through the subdivision process to make it clear what parcels are coming to town and what are staying with Lori Wingate, who is on with us tonight, who is Mary's daughter. Since we're going through the process of subdividing these parcels anyways, we wanted to allow Lori the opportunity to do a subdivision of the parcel she's keeping, in order to do it all at the same time. I think it's really important to note, though, the town is the applicant here. So when we do finally bring the subdivision application before you, we will be the applicants with the support, of course, of Lori, but we will run it through the process. When we are working with Lori, we've got the 2 parcels coming to town, and then Lori's looking to subdivide her parcel in 4 for a total technically of 6 lots. So under Nederland Municipal Code, 6 lots does require a major subdivision process. However, it's a really onerous process, would require us to do a variety of different surveys and evaluations of the land. And we're seeking that variance because 2 of the parcels, of course, are coming to town. And those 2 parcels have conservation easements on them. So we can't even develop them as is. So say if you kind of put those to the wayside, what Lori's looking to do is subdivide her parcel in 4, and that is considered a minor subdivision. So what we're asking the Planning Commission to evaluate is would it be appropriate for town to request from both Planning Commission for recommended approval and the Board of Trustees to run this application as a minor subdivision instead of a major subdivision? It's a little unique in this situation that we are the applicant, of course, so we provided a bit of background in the request. And then I also, as town administrator with support of Attorney Madsen, did the variance criteria analysis. And we really do feel that the spirit of what we're trying to do falls more in line with a minor subdivision process than the major subdivision. Again, a lot of that really kind of pulling down to the 2 of the parcels have the conservation easement and they're going to town, and the other 4 would be a minor if Lori were to run this process separate from town. So happy to answer any questions. The one thing I want to note is that I did include the preliminary subdivision site plan, but it is just draft, and so please don't look at this as what will come before you under a subdivision application, but it helps to just show you what are we looking at in terms of how this parcel would be subdivided into 6. Happy to answer any questions. Lori, I don't know if you have anything you want to add, but Lori also wanted to just introduce herself to the Planning Commission, put a face to the name, so you knew who she was. So Lori, I'd love to turn it over, and then Jennifer, if you have things too.
I just want to add really quick, just for background for the Planning Commission, because I know this isn't really an issue that has come before you in the past. So I wanted to share that this is an administrative review. It's not a quasi-judicial decision that you're making. It's really just administrative in terms of deciding if it's appropriate to process this under a minor subdivision application rather than the more onerous major subdivision requirement. And then the other piece, and I think that this was mentioned in the AIM, but this is really something that should have been done in 2000. You know, the town should have gone through this process when this agreement was entered into with Wingate, just to create all the lines and split everything up appropriately. I mean, if you look at how it's described in the property records, it's really pretty messy. So what we're doing now is really a cleanup of something that should have been done a long time ago.
Any idea why it wasn't done a long time ago?
Well, this is quick and it was quick and easy. That's my assumption. You know, this has cost money for the town to put together these plats. And so that's the only thing that I could assume is that it was easier not to. I mean, if you look at the agreement, it looks like a napkin scribbling as to the property division. So I don't know. That's my guess.
Okay,
I
we're
think it
past
was
that.
just never really formalized, I think is the issue, and kind of fell through the cracks over time. Maybe Lori can add something to that. I don't know. Oh, I think you're muted.
I wish I could add something detailed to that, but we've been doing a lot of digging and some forensics, and my mom had a mind of her own and plowed forward and got this done, and I'm just trying to make sure that the right land is handed off to the town and that we do whatever wasn't done.
Thanks for that.
Thank you.
And I'm really excited that it's going to the town, so.
Thank
We
you.
are too.
All right, thank you, everyone. The only question I had, Miranda, was that, under the municipal code, it states the owner of a property may request a variance, but in this case, the town is requesting the variance?
So the town, in partnership with Lori, is requesting the variance. Since the town is going to be owners of some of the parcel and Lori will be owners of the parcel, we are recognizing that this is a huge gift to town that the Wingates are giving. And so we felt it was appropriate for town to run it through the process. And so we have paid for the surveys and done all the work going into this subdivision application. And Lori has been a part of that journey. But yes, we are taking the lead here in recognizing that we felt it was appropriate for town to take the burden of the process since we are getting such a huge gift from the Wingate family.
Right. It wasn't quite clear in the packet which parcels were coming to the town. I assume number 5 and 6, but I didn't see that anywhere.
Yeah, sorry. It is number 5 and 6 on the plat. I'm happy to share screen for those who don't have 5 and 6 right in front of you. But what we did here is if you kind of looked at the original drawing that was in the agreement, these were 3. You had one here, and one here. We've now combined these 2 here to be parcel 4, and then we're getting parcel 6. And then Lori's keeping 1, 2, and 5. 1, 2, 3, and 5. I can make this a little bigger, but I'm gonna have to kind of jump around. So town taking again 6 here, 4 here, which does conclude this little piece up here. And Lori is keeping 5, 3, 2, and 1.
And just to add to this, technically the town does already own the gift property, which is lot 6, proposed lot 6 on the plat. But that should be formalized a little bit better. And then the other one, which one is that, Miranda? 4?
4, yep, here.
Yeah, 4 does need to be transferred.
So it's 4 and 6 that will
Yeah,
be gifted.
4 and 6. Sorry, no, you said 5. 4 and 6. These 2.
Okay.
And then originally 5 was one ginormous parcel. And so Lori has subdivided it out. Lori, correct me if I'm wrong, but 2 is where the home currently is. There's a home on 2.
Yep, that's right. And then there's kind of another home that hasn't been used for, I think, 40 or 50 years on one of them, but it's dilapidated. And I think actually plot 6, wasn't it one of the challenges we had was that it actually had never been legally divided?
Right. Yeah, the map showed, or the way in which the agreement made it look was that this was officially subdivided off, but not quite. We met with the assessors, we determined that was not quite accurate.
I'm looking at the town zoning map. I was trying to figure out if this is high or low density residential. We have very similar colors for the 2. Can you clarify that?
It's low density residential.
Okay, any other questions?
And just out of curiosity, so that so just to make sure I have this right, there's the proposed lot 5, and then next to that, there's this, I think what you're showing is, yeah, then to the, I don't know how to point on the screen, but toward to the left, there's the proposed lot 3.
Yeah.
Is the idea then that there would be that larger lot 5 and then that smaller lot 3 would get created? Yeah, that's the one.
Correct. So lot 3 and lot 1 kind of get created. So it's 1, 2, 3, and 5 are currently one lot. So Lori's looking to divide it. And Lori, do you want to maybe share with the commission what your motivation was behind breaking this up a bit?
Sure. Anyone who has any experience in development might look at this and say, well, that doesn't make any sense. They're kind of random lines for me in my view. I want to make sure that we have a large plot that is always the cabin. I don't know if you know the history of the cabin, but it's been my family for 100 years. And my grandparents' ashes are scattered in the backyard, as are my mom's, as are my uncles. So that big plot will keep as it is. And then this side lot, I have no plan or thought about it, but it just seemed like while we were doing this, it's an expensive thing for a family to have for a long time. And you know, I look at my kids and when they have this place, will they want to say maybe one of them build a place or what? I just felt like it gave us some flexibility, but with no real deep thought.
So right now you're thinking of keeping it in the family, is that correct?
Yeah, yeah. We've got with Scott Harrison's help, opening it and closing it in the summer, and we are continuing to support Mary Wingate Days at the Carousel, so we'll have family there for a long time.
All right, any other questions?
Hey guys, this is Tim. Can you still hear me okay? I'm still on the phone.
Yeah, we can hear you.
We hear
Okay,
you
cool.
twice.
You hear me twice?
There's a bit of an echo. Yeah, but continue.
Okay, sorry about that. Is there, like, going back, is there any question over, like, administratively whether the purchase parcel and the gift parcel, like, as they are, if they were, like, subdivided incorrectly or illegally? You know what I mean? Versus, like, administratively, it's just they just skip a step or something like that.
So I'll try to answer this. This is Attorney Madsen, and we actually didn't go back and look at the town code as it existed in 2000 to verify whether there was a quote unquote illegal subdivision. But it you know, just the thought of getting this done now and subdividing it now is it really makes it cleaner for the town and for the Wingate family to have this subdivision process completed so that everybody has a lot. The town and the Wingates have lots that conform to the zoning codes and all the requirements, and so that the legal descriptions are clean and clear.
Gotcha. So I guess more to clarify my question is, what exactly didn't happen back in 2000 as far as sort of indicating these lots and subdividing the gift parcel and the purchase parcel, like, correctly?
Well, the way that the parcels were divided is through this agreement that you have in your packet, through the
Yep.
exhibit
Gotcha.
in the packet. So that's the only process, and it wasn't really a process, but it was through the agreement.
Gotcha. So the town and Mary agreed on this back in the day, but administratively moving forward, it wasn't like sort of fully executed and recorded.
Right, exactly. Yeah,
Is
there
that a
was
way to
no
say it?
plat map. Yes, there was no map that was
Gotcha.
filed with the Boulder County Clerk and Recorder's Office, nothing approved by, you know, the Planning Commission or the Board of Trustees would have approved the agreement. But that's it.
And it's really no big deal because still the Wingate family and the town still want to uphold that agreement as is. So there's like nobody arguing against it. So
Right. Everybody's working together, and yes.
Gotcha. Okay. That answered my question. Thank you.
Hey, Steve, it's Roger. I could have a comment.
Sure.
It's a little sketchy in what I remember, but Tim, it's actually two trustees still living in around town here that we could talk to that were involved in this. And I would be glad to come back and actually, because this is just discussion, so I don't think we can take action tonight. If we'd like to actually answer those questions, I actually believe there was an application for a PUD maybe Lori at this point can jog what she might remember. There was actually a PUD and the neighborhood was up in, there's that echo, there's up in arms about developing this property. And that's when Mary Wingate came along and then actually bought all the property. And it was, at the time, it was kind of reported, oh my goodness, the town got an angel just arrived and took away this development issue problem. And, but that's kind of what I remember happening. And I actually suspect, so here's what I don't know, I was not on the board then. Those were existing lots, so they didn't make any lots, no subdivision. They just took the parcels that were there that were being applied for under the PUD, and they just transferred it to Mary Wingate, and they determined that, those areas would be, open space and whatever. So it was a formal agreement, but you could almost say informal. But what I believe happened, I'll give Scott Brunchen a call. He has a memory that's absolutely, he will know. But I think they just took the existing plat, so there was no actual subdivision. They just took the lots that were being put forward for development, and then Mary Wingate buys them, and they just transferred them over. And that's kind of why we're 20 years later, you're kind of seeing that, like she said, there was just that one big lot there was part of the homestead lot. So I suspect that's what happened, but I'm not absolutely certain, but that's why you're seeing it, kind of not a formal subdivision. There never was a formal subdivision process. Hopefully that helps.
Yeah,
Or not.
Right.
I will report back next month and see if we can find a little more details. Because there are actually a couple of the trustees still live here in the town.
Okay, thank you, Roger. Any other questions? One of the reasons that we decided to bring this forth as a discussion item first was some basic history, some background as to exactly what happened or why it happened. And so this should be coming before us next month. Is that correct, Miranda? As an action item?
Correct.
Okay. And this will give the commission more time to look over the documents and so forth. And I assume you'll have, you have any more updated plats or anything like that?
No, because this isn't the subdivision application. We're just asking for a variance to the process. We still need time to prepare all the appropriate materials for the subdivision application. So I simply just included the plat for illustrative purposes. So I do want to be mindful that we're not kind of mixing up the subdivision application process with what is being asked of you under this being just the variance to the process.
So the variance request will come in August, and then we'll actually get a subdivision application at a later date. Is that what you're saying?
Correct, because then it will go before the Board of Trustees, because the Board of Trustees ultimately has to approve the request for a variance to the process. So if the Board of Trustees and the Planning Commission both approve going from a major to a minor, we'll come back before the Planning Commission with the actual minor subdivision application and all of the documentation that is required under that section of code.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I don't think that was quite clear to most of the other Planning Commission members as to what the steps were. So thank you for clarifying that. Jim, you raised your hand.
Yeah. Say, Miranda, it would be very helpful if we could get some better representation of where this land is. I'm looking on Google Maps on one screen, trying to look at the plat. It's very difficult to figure out where these plots are. So for next month, I would really appreciate, it doesn't have to be a full-on thing, but even just a computer copy of Google Maps. Lori, that's causing the feedback echo when you unmute. Thanks. So I would love to see a better representation of where that property is. And then I have a couple other questions here. What kind of differences or impact would happen changing this from a major subdivision to a minor subdivision if the Wingate family somehow changed this? This is already helpful, what you're doing right there, Miranda. That's great. Change this, what was to sell this. I mean, it could be at any time in the future, maybe 15 years from now. Some other family members decide to sell this. Now we've entered into this agreement, and it's not going to have to deal with the major subdivision rules. And could it then be developed at that time? I'm kind of curious what the impact is on those other lots that we're now putting under a minor subdivision rule.
So I think the biggest thing is Jennifer, jump in if I'm totally off base with what I'm about to say, but obviously the town could have just done a subdivision where we made it clear what was happening with these parcels. So here's parcel number 6, this is parcel number 4, these two are now combined. We could have just handled this all on our own and just left this large parcel to Lori to do with what she pleases and run it through a subdivision process later. Again, in recognizing what a huge gift this is to town to get these 2 large parcels. We offered to allow her to join in on the subdivision and just and allow her to subdivide, again, this larger parcel here. Had the 2 processes been broken out and we did it on our own and then Lori did it on her own, she would have always, assuming Lori kept it to the 4 parcels, she would have always run it through a minor subdivision. The only thing that flips this to major is that we're doing it together and we're adding in the 2 of our parcels. So I think if you're talking about implications, that's why we don't feel like major is appropriate here. We're just trying to get it all done at one time. But it would have always been a minor subdivision if Lori were to do it on her own and split it the way she's looking to split it. Jennifer, do you have something to add? But that's
No, I mean, the only other thing to add is that at some point in the future, if the Wingate lots are developed, they will need to be developed according to town code, according to the zoning code, and building codes. So, I don't really see a significant implication or unintended consequences by processing this under a minor subdivision rather than a major. And with a minor, the subdivision application still needs to go to the Planning Commission for a recommendation on approval, and then also will need to go to the Board of Trustees for final approval.
And these lots are all going to stay, to Commissioner Herring's question, they'll stay low density residential. So, obviously larger lot sizes and all the implications under yard and bulk would apply here. And then town can't develop the lots given to us except for recreational purposes. And that really hasn't been decided. And those will be much longer questions. But any town development that has some sort of like recreational component will go through the NPP process to get feedback. And if a building permit had to be pulled, then there's a public hearing on how these parcels would be to be developed. So I also think there's, to Attorney Madsen's point, plenty of opportunities for the public and the Planning Commission to weigh in on all of these developments. Less so, obviously, of course, if Lori looks to develop under use by right, under low density, but of course, you'll be able to weigh in when this comes back to you as a subdivision application.
Okay, well, thank you. And if you could just do a screenshot of this map and label the plots and put it in next month's packet, I think that will be very helpful. Just what you have on the screen right there. That helps me see exactly where that is now, looking at the terrain map. But I think part of the issue is some of us that haven't been around as long as Steve and Roger just are concerned about it being a little faster of a process, and that exactly what you said, there would be some unintended consequences however many years down the line. And so just what you're telling us right now is helping me feel better. Just an explanation of why, that this isn't going to create a bunch of snowmass ski villages up there with the next owners after the Wingate family. But I'm assuming they don't ever plan to sell that because they've got their ashes buried on the property. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Any other comments or questions from planning commission members?
Yeah, I have one. And
Okay, go ahead, Mike.
preface it with just thank you so much, Lori. It's an amazing gift. And I really do think it's fair to take the simpler route. But also, the question is that is there any benefit to anybody in keeping it as a major subdivision process?
Why are you asking us? Because we're
Yeah, I mean,
Mike, we're biased over here with our ask. I think, for
Yeah, of
us,
course.
just recognizing the town won't be developing these
Yeah,
lots, for
yeah,
any sort of building. And so in recognizing that a major subdivision requires a preliminary and final soils report, a utilities plan,
yeah,
a traffic impact analysis, I mean, we're just not, I really, in my mind, we kind of are, if you pull those two parcels
yeah,
out, Lori's is a minor subdivision. It would always be a
absolutely.
minor.
Yeah.
So, and the two being added in to make it the major just can't be developed in a way where those
Yeah.
drainage and utilities and all those things are needed, because we're never going to build on this lot, on either of those lots.
Yep, totally. Yeah, thanks. It just, yeah. So it doesn't sound like it's the right thing to do for anybody involved to keep it as a major subdivision.
Yeah, I think it would
Yeah,
be
thanks.
different if Lori was looking to
Yeah.
take her parcel and divide it
Yeah,
to 10, like then that's a very
Right.
different conversation. And then yes, but what she's looking to do separate from town is just a true minor subdivision that we're tacking on to.
Great. Thank you, Miranda.
Okay, any other comments or questions?
I just want to tell Jim that page for all the planning commission members, if you haven't used it, the Boulder County Assessor page is the one that you go to, and it gives you an absolutely beautiful, clear picture of all the properties in Boulder County, but just zooming in on Nederland. But I think that's where that picture is. But yeah, as a tool, every time I use it almost weekly, Jim. I'm always on that Boulder County Assessor website, and that's actually kind of the best thing to actually see the pictures of town.
Okay, thanks, Roger. That's good to know. All right. Well, as I said, it'll be coming back to us, but I felt it was very important to give this background so that people fully understand what it is that we're trying to do here. So thank you to town staff and Lori for enlightening us. Okay, if there's nothing else, we'll move on to the next discussion item, 5.2, which is a animal subcommittee update. And I think Miranda, if you want to introduce it, and then maybe we can get comments from Jim and Roger and Mike, perhaps.
Sure. So we brought this, obviously keeping animals, I'll go way back. Keeping Animals Subdivision, our subcommittee was developed, over almost a year and a half ago. Slow to get started, but when we met, thought we would give it a stab at a repeal and replace and throw a lot at the Planning Commission and get your thoughts. There are pluses and minuses to that. Maybe a little bit miscommunication in that was not what the code was going to be, but we wanted to give you every opportunity to evaluate what a keeping animals code could look like. The feedback we got from the Planning Commission and the public was you've gone too far, scale it back a bit, go back to the original code and do kind of some red line changes, focusing very specifically on domestic large hooved livestock, clarifying some language related to maybe barking dogs, and then of course really look extensively at the enforcement side of this, given the transfer to Boulder County. Mike has had to take a little bit of a step back from our group, so we've worked with Roger a bit more, talked to Mike early on, got a lot of his feedback and incorporated that, but I've been working with Roger to really clarify what animals are allowed Still including the special review use components in that we'd want to make sure that you have a maintenance plan. You know, how are you going to care for this animal? How are you going to deal with the waste? Does your corral meet the right sizes? Is your lot appropriate? So adding in all of those parameters, but focusing more specifically on what can you and can you not have. The reason that there's not a draft before you tonight is that we've been working with Attorney Madsen just to make sure legally everything makes sense. And we'd also like an opportunity to put that ordinance before Boulder County Sheriff's Office and code enforcement. We feel like rather than bringing it to the Planning Commission, that it makes sense to put it through those respective organizations to say, hey, where we reference code enforcement, can you actually do that? Or where we reference law enforcement, even though we haven't paid for animal control services, can you also help us enforce this? And so before releasing it publicly, making sure we really kind of cross those T's and dot those I's. But believe this is on the agenda tonight to allow Roger to kind of share some of the work he's been doing and for us to answer any questions people might have. So I'd love to turn it over to Roger.
Well, unfortunately, I don't really have a whole lot to add because, you know, waiting for Jennifer and staff to actually kind of finalize which way we're going. I'll only say that, you know, I've worked very much with Britt on the special review of the livestock portion. I mean, that's really what I've concentrated on. And so I think we're still a little up in the air, and I don't know, maybe Miranda, you can actually say, but I think what a lot of comment and a long discussion. Wait, see the draft back. But the biggest issue that for me was we had the double review process, whether staff would do it or the existing process of, you know, bringing a special SRU back to the Planning Commission. So I'm not even certain which way you decided, or if, you know, it's something we just actually discuss next month to see which way, if we want the review, how it would pan out. So it would be inappropriate for me to actually, you know, go one way or the other, but I just leave it there that I think as Miranda described, those points are the ones we're working on. And we're also going to be, hopefully, when you have it, to really study which livestock animals would be available and which one are, you know, and how the review process would work, whether through town, special review, or the other proposed idea was actually if there was an objection to bringing it to the Board of Trustees and having them decide, which was actually, you know, a good idea that was put forth in that, you know, the alternate draft. So I'll just stop there. Otherwise, I'm just going to get you more confused. Is that accurate, Miranda?
Yeah, I mean, so we've got a series of questions. I guess I'm hesitant to want to dive into them tonight because we're just not quite ready. Because I don't want to be asking questions that, again, if code enforcement, law enforcement, legally don't seem feasible, then there's no reason to ask the question to the Planning Commission, which is kind of why we had asked to maybe delay this a bit, to allow us time to keep working through some of those pieces. And then we would come to the Planning Commission with very specific questions, such as, how do you feel about the list of animals that we're saying could be allowed? Do you prefer an administrative hearing before the community planner with the ability for someone to appeal under different, maybe the Planning Commission or other options? Or would you prefer an SRU to go through the Planning Commission? I think, yes, we have those questions, but we just are not quite ready to dive into that just yet in staff's opinion. And we're not trying to drag this out. And I know that may be how it feels to members of the Planning Commission or the community, and that's not our intention. It's just to us, given the experience we had last time, we feel it's best to come to you all with as close to what would be the recommended code as we possibly can. So there is no speculation about what we are or are not trying to do. And so I'm happy to start throwing some of those questions out. If Chair Williams, you feel like you'd like to use this time, or if this is just really more of an update, I'm not quite sure how you want to best use it. But part of me would just really ask that we have a more robust discussion in August related to this.
Yeah, no, I fully understand that. The reason I wanted to put this a brief status update on the agenda was that I'd received a number of questions as whatever happened to it, or is it, you know, is it dead? Is it still going on? What's the status? And then the second issue was, since you're in the process of finalizing the draft ordinance, I wanted to give the Planning Commission, anyone, the opportunity to add anything else that they felt should be considered, at least at this point. I mean, they'll have the opportunity next month to, to review it and to comment on it. But this is kind of just offering the opportunity for others to do that. So, but more of a status update. And Mike, do you have anything to add since you are on the committee?
No, not really. Yeah, so it's been difficult for me to meet during the day, seeing that I'm working. So that was the reason that I had to step back a little bit. I would like to be more involved going forward, and I think I should be able to have some availability this month so that we can get ready for, like you said, a more robust presentation and discussion in August.
Okay. Good.
Thanks.
Does anyone else have any other planning commission members have any comments or questions at this point? If not, we will eagerly await the draft ordinance next month.
Thanks, Roger, for the work you put into this. I never knew this could get so intricate, but you really scoured the code across the state.
It's been a good one.
Yeah. Every time I see alum, I think of you.
Yeah, well, all I got, just not to belabor, but yes, until we actually have some kind of a draft document in front of us, I think it would be almost harmful to try to proceed with the discussion till we're all looking at, at least a draft of where we want to go. So otherwise, what's the point of having a discussion? So Steve, I think that's exactly right on and very appropriate, doing what we're doing here tonight, an update.
Great. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, if no other comments, we'll move on to the third discussion item, which is the Town of Nederland Strategic Plan. And I assume, Miranda, you will introduce this one as well.
Yes, so in your packet is the Town Board of Trustees Strategic Plan. Take us back a little bit here. The Board of Trustees had two separate work sessions to talk specifically about goals. So their first work session was in April 15th. And we had asked Chris LeMay, who is our Department of Local Affairs representative, to help lead this session. And it had two components. It was really a review of roles and responsibilities and rules of conduct to being an elected official, since this was a kind of a board that was just coming together new with all the recent appointments and that special election. And then the second half was for the board to just identify goals. And it was a really open session where the board just kind of threw out any goal that came to mind that they wanted the town to work on, both short-term and long-term. We did a similar exercise about a month later with the department heads. We didn't share the list from the Board of Trustees of the department heads. We wanted them to make two separate lists. Chris LeMay then compiled the two, and we held a work session last month where we really dove into, okay, we're going to focus on anything over the next 18 months. What will it be? So before you is that list of our goals to accomplish the rest of 2023 to 2024. And I think it's really important to note, we have larger goals, or we have lofty goals, things that we want to do that are bigger than this list. And this list is very much focused on what are we going to accomplish in the next 18 months. And the reason for that is to kind of remove that almost like squirrel effect where we're just picking and grabbing at random things and staff are pulled in 10 different directions. it gives us, I think Mayor Pro Tem Mahol called it kind of that North Star. We know where we're going and we know how we're going to get there because we have a document to guide us through that process. And so if something's not on here, there might be a reason and we're happy to talk through it. But more than anything, we just want the Planning Commission's feedback. We want to hear from you. We want to talk to all boards and commissions and make some adjustments to this based on your feedback, as well as answer any questions about why we pick certain things over others or anything that may come to mind. And so we'd just love to open it up to hear what you have to say. Mayor Pro Tem Mahol, do you have anything else you'd like to add? Oh, you're muted.
This is unvarnished. It's gone to other boards for input. None of that input's been incorporated yet. So give it a hard look. I think this is a long way from complete, but it was a yeoman's job to pull this together. And I got to thank Nicole Sterling for what she did so far, and Miranda for pulling these. The process worked. Having 2 sessions with blind tests, or blind goal setting on both sides. It was a great way to find alignment, and I think we're getting there.
Yeah, and to Mayor Pro Tem Mahol's point, we've only presented to ProSab. ProSab, did wonder why we didn't have kind of larger scale goals like a trails connectivity system throughout all of town. We're here for that. We love that. Just not going to be feasible over the next 18 months. So scaling some of that stuff in to recognize what can we do as a very small and mighty team between now and the end of next year. And so we were strategic about how we brought things on. And, an example using that large scale trail system example, while we can't build it, we're going to study it. We have the PROS master plan update, and under that update, it'll help build out the framework for what that trails connectivity map looks like. And then maybe when we build the next set of strategic plan goals, I could see building the trail system as the true goal. And so some of these things have stepped pieces in how we're going to get there. Another example that came up is Big Springs. People are like, you're only going to study Big Springs. Why aren't you going to build the route? So just a reminder, the funding we have only allows us to study it. And so that's why it's listed as we're going to study the Big Springs egress with, again, a goal of after the study is done to build it out, hopefully in 2025, because the study would have been complete. But building the route doesn't make sense to add to this goal sheet because that's not something that will actually happen in the next 18 months because of that study.
Yes, okay, thank you. A quick question. Is there any priority order in this list? Or is it just kind of like just grouped by different objectives, but no objective has a priority? Is that?
Yeah, they're actually, the way in which Trustee Sterling built this was with feedback from the Board of Trustees. Their objectives are in order of priority. So objective 1 is the highest priority, then 2, then 3. Now, what falls underneath those objectives in terms of the true activity to be completed, there is no set ranking to those, but the objectives themselves are ranked in a way that the board felt was appropriate.
Okay. And I assume a lot of this input, when I first looked at this, I thought of the comprehensive plan because a lot of what's in here as a strategic plan, could go into the comprehensive plan, particularly for the items that are not going to happen in the first 18 months.
Correct. We do recognize this may feel kind of like a duplication of that, but this is, our hope for many that aren't just phase 1 of a larger project. An example of like completing certain grants. There's no reason for that to end up in the comprehensive plan because we're going to do it. Paving the visitor center lot, that's going to happen. So some of those things don't need to fall into the comp plan, but larger infrastructure maintenance, like looking at the drainage and culvert issue throughout town, that very much belongs in the comp plan because it's a much larger conversation and all we're going to do is really map it out this year and next year.
Okay, yeah, that was kind of my impression, reading it. I'll open it up to the rest of the commission to see if there's any specific questions or particularly any omissions or something that you feel is important that has been overlooked or not put high enough priority into it. one in particular that I think Jim Reese and I mentioned was the sewer, extending the sewer system into Big Spring, for example. I didn't see that on this list. Maybe that's a longer term goal. But it's something that, if we're making a laundry list of things that, need to be there, that's probably pretty important as well.
We started with a laundry list and got tactical pretty quickly.
Yeah, and this isn't a laundry list because this is all about what are we going to accomplish in the next 18 months. And a sewer system is captured in our master infrastructure plan. But again, it came down to, are we going to build a sewer system in Big Springs between now and end of 2024? And the answer is no. It's a multi-million-dollar project that has to have funding secured. So it's what could, if it's a recommendation of the Planning Commission, though, what could be is town will identify the funding for the Big Springs sewering.
Right.
Between now and 2024. That's realistic and appropriate for this plan. And I see Vice Chair Reese nodding his head. So maybe that is a recommendation that we add that as securing the funding, because we have quite a few of those in here that say all we're going to do is secure the funding for this.
Jim?
Yeah. So that was for sure going to be one of the points I brought up. Maybe not that we're going to accomplish it, but at least something that designates that we're starting to move the ball forward, planning, how we're looking to try and access funds. I've talked with Miranda previously about how I feel like we're in a once in a generation period for infrastructure dollars over the next 5 years that are going to come available. And we have to position ourselves in a place for this. Last I saw, JBA put out about a $33 million plan, which I'm sure is significantly increased in cost. But it would be good to see that listed on there. I'm going to be honest with you, it's a little disheartening to see that we're at the complete Big Springs egress study by December 2024, because back when my wife was the town manager, we got all the way past that. We got everything approved, and all we were needing for is funding. We had a route completely approved and ready to go. And now we're all the way back to trying to get funding for the study. So it is a little disheartening to see that it's taking decades, seemingly, for projects that are of such importance to get moved forward. But I wanted to kind of talk about a couple of the goals, things that I saw that were really great. And one was that the very first goal, and now that you say that they're prioritized, I think that's awesome, that the first objective is to bring all the town staff and employees up to their minimum salary rate by January 2024. I know that there was a compensation study, and it's very hard. We're competing, since we can't offer people outside of our area housing to come and be a lower wage employee in the town of Nederland. The very least we can do is give them benefits and wages that will keep them coming back to Nederland from wherever they do have to drive from. There's obviously places that can pay more that are closer to them. So I think it's very important for us to look at the compensation and not trying to, be in the bottom third of what those type of positions pay. So I'm glad that's the very first thing on the very first objective. So good on you for that. So great job on that. I did want to say under the staff, and I brought this up once with you, Miranda, I think it would be beneficial, and it's probably not going to happen over this 2-year period or 18-month period, but to consider looking at hiring a public works manager to help seek and run these larger projects, seek out funding, seek out grant opportunities. It would be one of the biggest things, the egress, or the sewer project would be one of those things that the public works manager, I think, would be able to handle. I think the people that are currently working in our public works department have, every day they're busy. They got something they got to do every day right in front of them, and they can't look 2 years, 5 years down the road on planning and things at the level that is above their pay grade. So just a consideration there. I did want to ask a question about number 5, where it says, let's see, objective 5. Let me come to it real quick here. I wrote a note. Augment and leverage the town's financial support resources to support desired levels of services to ensure upkeep of the town's infrastructure. And so, in the very first thing it says on there is water and water user rates and plant investment fees, and then it talks about some other fees. But I wonder if that translates, as I'm looking at that, does that translate to we have to raise fees to get the desired level of services for our towns? Because I've certainly heard a lot of feedback about how we have some of the highest water rates of anywhere in the state.
So currently, the town does have a rate study that covers us through 2024 that has a 5 to 6% increase for base fees, usage fees, and plant investment fees. And the intention is to go into next year's budget with those 5 to 6% increases. What we're noting, though, is that there is a need to complete another rate study, which could tell us a variety of things. It could say, yes, keep going, or hey, you're now in a pretty solid place financially that you don't need to look for any additional increases. But we really need another plan to help us assess that. And so number one under objective 5 is very much tied to objective 3, where I believe, or somewhere in here, we talk about the rate study and the importance of getting a rate study done next year. Under objective 3, number 7, we talk about the rate study. And then that, of course, would feed whether the Board of Trustees would look at an increase to water and sewer user rates and plant investment fees as a way of leveraging. But also under that, you'll see they're asking, the intention is to pick 3 of 5, and that may not be one, but the only way we know that is to complete the rate study.
Okay, thank you. That's excellent. That's all very good information. And then the other question I had was, we have the objectives that are prioritized, but then there's a lot of sub tasks underneath the objectives. Are those also prioritized, or are there, say, if there's something that falls under objective 5 and it's number 1 on objective 5, could that possibly be higher up based on some of the other objectives? That maybe. I'm just trying to understand the priority.
Yeah, those are definitely not prioritized, especially under objective 5, because that's just a list of ways in which the town could leverage and increase financial resources. So that's just a list. Perhaps we remove the numbers for that clarification. An example is like under objective 4 regarding modernization of town infrastructure, we just went department by department. And so we didn't say, this is number 1, this is number 2 for these departments. What we're saying is, for streets is going to implement 1, 2, and 3, and parks is going to do 1, 2, and 3. And so in no particular order, it's kind of that, like, if we do nothing else in the next 18 months, 1, 2, and 3 of those lists need to get done, or at least substantial movement on 1, 2, and 3. So the community has something to hold town and government accountable towards. Hey, you said you were going to pave the visitor center lot and finish Big Springs Drive. You said you were going to do that as a part of your strategic plan, and our expectation is that you meet those deadlines as set.
Okay.
So that's why it's not in order, because we added in the dates for the accountability measure.
Okay, thank you very much. I think it's a really good list, and it sounds like it's going to change a little bit based on feedback. I would say it would be helpful for the final list. I know you're not there, and we're moving towards that. If all the sub bullets underneath the objectives, if there is, so maybe if on objective 3, if there's 2 of those items you definitely want to get to, maybe have some kind of an asterisk or highlighting or something like that that says, okay, there's 7 things here on objective 3. We're going to try and get to, 1 and 4 is going to be the priority we're going to try and get to. But all these look very good. I'm going to also say that I think the bridge, the secondary bridge, would be something that your public works manager could probably help try and seek funding for if you had someone who had experience in that area. But, I always felt like Chris Pelletier more than paid for his salary based on the amount of grant opportunities he brought in. So just food for thought, something to consider down the road. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jamie. I was also thinking a way to, when you look under an objective and you've got like 7 tasks and which one bubbles to the top. So maybe some kind of color coding where green might be the ones you definitely think can happen, or or have a higher priority than others. And that way, once you get it all together, just have another way to sort the various tasks. Okay, anyone else? Any comments?
Yeah, this is Linda. I have a comment on, I realize the secondary bridge is a main source of the traffic flow, but up until that point, is there anything which I may have overlooked about the traffic flow coming out of Ace Hardware and out of the grocery store? Because the congestion there is huge, along with the pedestrian crossing. Is that addressed at all in here? Because I don't recall seeing that.
It's not specifically addressed in here, and I think, again, it kind of ties back to a plan that we need to finish the multimodal transportation plan in order to assess what's going to be the most appropriate transportation system for Nederland. And then it turns into securing funding to implement that plan. And so if I'm hearing you, Commissioner Glasser, I think that maybe it's appropriate to say, not only will we complete the multimodal transportation plan, but we'll secure funding for the execution of the recommended traffic flow changes.
Right. And until that point, is there any solution? Because the congestion is pretty bad in that area.
I mean, the challenge is that CDOT, it's not town. Town will have to work alongside CDOT. And so we felt like we could really strengthen our negotiating power or our leverage by having a multimodal plan that probably will identify that as a key area in which we need to address the traffic. And then we can go to CDOT and say, let's work collaboratively to deal with this issue. But it's not something town could just choose to do on our own.
Okay, thank you.
When is that multimodal plan due again?
It was originally April, although we may be looking at closer to July because we're still working on some contract stuff, but definitely mid 2024.
So outcomes from that would then work into this plan?
Yep. Yeah, I mean, we do recognize that this is kind of a living document. So when you talk about the color coding, or how we rank them, the board should be holding town accountable. And I don't know if it's like quarterly or we just have a discussion about where do we stand on all of these, but it may need to change. Roadblocks could happen or an incredible grant opportunity that allows us to expedite certain things. We do see this as an ever changing, but what it won't change is adding on new. Like, it's really holding us to, we're going to focus on these things and does give the town a little bit of leverage to say, not right now. Like, we love the idea of maybe new recreational assets, but not right now, because we really need to focus on getting this list done. And again, 18 months will fly by. It'll be December 2024 before we know it. And so if this is an ambitious plan, when I talked to ProSat, they're like, you're really going to do all this? And as town staff, we're committed. This is, many of these, this is already what we're doing. We just want the opportunity to check the box and get it done without having a whole bunch of new stuff added to our plate. We really just want to focus on getting these things done.
Right. No, I understand it's a living document, and my comment on the color coding, and that can change too. But if we're working on a particular one, we change it to green, or if something it's been put on the shelf for a while, that's red, or some other. But that might help people understand exactly what's happening. Just a suggestion.
Yeah. No, I definitely appreciate that. When I presented the compensation study and kind of leading into this conversation, I think as town staff, what we've been using it as a term is a year of stabilization. We just need a year to get it all done. I think we're doing some incredible things, but so many things continuously get added to our plate that it becomes very hard to check that box. And we would love to just, as a community and as a whole, say, yes, let's champion behind this 18-month plan. And if we can accomplish this 18-month plan, I would hope that the community is thrilled with us, because so much on here is what people have been asking for year after year after year. And it would be a huge milestone for town to say, yes, we made this plan and we executed it. Since there is a lot of that, there's a lot of plans out there, and there's a lot of feedback of oh, yet another plan that won't happen. We'd like to change that narrative and prove under this strategic plan that we can in fact do it, and we will do it.
It's a good idea, Steve, to color code it, but I would say let's just use the very top ones and make them green, because if the bottom ones are pink, anybody will say, why are those even on there if you're not committed to it?
It's not a question of not being committed, it's just a question of what can be accomplished, or what do we think that we can do reasonably in, 18 months. I mean, when I first looked at it, it's a very ambitious list, and my first thought was, can we do all of this?
Probably not.
But yeah, and a strategic plan isn't meant to be like, yes, 100% compliance, but just imagine even 80% of what's on this list is still something we're celebrating, something that is incredible to accomplish. And it's our commitment, instead of people being like, what are town staff doing? Like, what are we working on? We have this document to say, you want to know what we're working on? We have our regular day-to-day jobs, and here is our above and beyond large scale goals that we're working towards.
Jim?
So I think it's very wise of you to put this down in writing and try and lock this in and get the BOT. You're going to need Tom's help to ensure there's not some, in the military, we call it mission creep, as other projects and things start to creep into what you already have listed as your objectives for the year. So with Tom's help, when they start saying, well, we really want to push this pump track this year, you can say, oh man, but we got approval for this other list of objectives. I will say it is also very ambitious. And the idea of color coding, I think, is based on resources and likelihood. The secondary bridge, getting the external funding for that might be the heaviest lift of that group. So maybe that would be, in the red, because that's going to be the most difficult to achieve. And the green ones are going to be the ones that, man, we got those on deck, and we're going to be able to handle that within our own town staff, and we have the resources for it. So that's the only thing that I think Steve and I were kind of looking at. But these are great, good goals. I would hope, if possible, that we could get something wedged in there about planning for future Big Spring sewer project, and that's the only thing I would like to see added.
Okay, other comments? Roger?
I'm taking notes as we go, just so you all know, in
Okay.
our working Google Drive. So.
Thank you.
Yeah, my little 2 cents, I think it's something saying about the low hanging fruit. And I just speaking about the roads, I mean, the idea of continuing Big Springs Drive and all those things, but I mean, just to do 200, 300 feet. I mean, if we did nothing else in streets other than to pave the 150 feet in front of the BNF driveway road there at Lakeview, in front of the train cars. I know they actually put some crushed stone down there, and oh my goodness, what an improvement, but it's just, not gonna last. So just doing 150, 200 feet would just make the entire shopping center so much more accessible and the visitors' experience. And we talk about low hanging fruit. And I would say, secondly, then would be Jefferson Street in front of Kathmandu. It's just horrible compared to, say, the parking lot, which, yes, needs to be restriped and all those things, but overall, the condition of the parking lot compared to, say, Jefferson is, it's totally different. So there's too little, couple hundred feet of road that would just make an unbelievable difference in the downtown area. So I would always remember low hanging fruit.
So and I appreciate you saying that, because I keep joking with Mark, by the time we bring this back, like 3 of his will already be checked off. The paving of the visitor center lot, and we've actually just added in Lakeview Drive, as well as Big Springs, are all set to happen in August. So maybe by the time this comes to the board, those are done. The only reason Jefferson is listed on this as a delay until later 2024, if not 2025, is that we're going to do some significant grading and drainage work over there, that it doesn't, when we do the transportation improvement project of pulling the sidewalk down, that it doesn't make sense to pave it now, because we just have to rip it all up in a year from now. So we are going to stick with the grading plans for now, but yes, it will definitely be paved, if not end of summer 2024, early 2025.
And I think this is part of the benefit of doing what we did, is getting a list together, because we're punching through it, as Miranda talked about, in some cases fairly quickly, more quickly than I expected.
But if you haven't had a chance to look at Mark's summer road improvement plan, what we did is we kind of memorialized that whole strategy in the strategic plan, about drainage work and grading and culverts and all of the pieces that go into just general road maintenance. To your point, Commissioner Cornell, that like we really just can't lose sight of, there's ongoing maintenance needs in the streets department that is going to have to continuously be captured in these types of documents. So it doesn't look like we're disregarding the need to examine roadways and figure out how to deal with proper drainage, but then also implement that.
Okay, yeah, well, you definitely want to keep the list of accomplishments in there to show people, hey, look what we've done here. So that's very important as well. Let's see, Stephanie or Timmy, Mike, do you have any comments, or what's your reaction to this document?
So as has been stated many times already, it's an ambitious list, and I think it's a great list. And this is perhaps for Tom. A couple of the things that I don't see on the list, which are like way beyond 18-month scope, and I don't want to do scope creep, but affordable housing, like true affordable housing, and methods that we can support it. Can of worms, I know, but also helping to alleviate some of the parking problems. I know that there's the housing study, and that's pending in December, I believe. But did you talk about if were there discussion about those items?
Yeah, there was a lot of discussion, and it really came down to can we do it?
Yeah.
If you look at the terms of the Board of Trustees, there's a lot of us rolling off in a year and a half, and going any further was just a pipe dream. I'm not sure even who's going to continue beyond that, but we definitely discussed affordable housing. And we went all over the map, but in the end, I think we had a pretty effective taskmaster who said, okay, can you commit to this?
Yeah.
And what's your MO?
Yeah.
The one thing we did do on Objective 6, and I'm sure you saw this, Commissioner Dye, but just noting that a lot of affordable housing is impacted by the challenge of doing it is impacted by our code. And so really working with not only the Board of Trustees, but the Planning Commission on a lot of Chapter 16 changes. And one of the conversations that came out of today's discussion is like perhaps a yard and bulk table specific to affordable housing. If you can approve that you're going to build affordable housing, then maybe you can have larger lot coverage or things like that. And that it all really starts with code, because even if we had affordable housing, we just have a lot of limitations.
Yeah.
So yes, that's the only reason why it's not quite on here, but movement towards it. Originally, Objective 6 wasn't even on here. And we heard, kind of loud and clear that it was very important that we acknowledge housing. And then the parking really kind of just ties back to that multimodal transportation plan of like, where is the most effective? We've of course had conversations about paid parking or a parking garage and those things, but again, solidifying it in a plan so we can secure the funding to then go get the money, especially if say it's a parking garage, we can go get the funding to build something.
Also, I wanted to, this is obviously in front of the legislature, the 2023 legislature, where I spent about 9 days this year. And it's Dr. Cog is already putting it on the agenda for the next legislature. So it's unfinished. And I think the most significant thing that came out of the previous legislature was 400 square feet or less is now treated from a zoning standpoint as a mobile home. And that's a kind of, so the Smurf Village type of living is going to go through a entirely different kind of regulation, but I don't think they're anywhere close to the finish with it yet. But a year and a half flies by really quick. It has, I've been doing the BOT stuff for about a year now, and I look back and go, oh, where did that go?
Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Miranda.
Anybody else?
I would just add too, so we're planning to bring this back before the Board of Trustees on October 15th. So if you're like, hey, I have another thought, please email the board, email town staff. My ask was that you email the Board of Trustees directly as a citizen and let them know your thoughts, and we'll collect that between now and ideally Friday, Friday the 11th. So Trustee Sterling and I have enough time to make some edits and bring back a document, but it is set as an action item on the 15th for ideally adoption.
Okay. So anyone can provide additional input after this meeting as well.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
But all of the feedback you provided, even the specific ads are officially in the draft working document, and I'll just kind of clean up the wording with Trustee Sterling. And so you will be able to see that when this comes back forward.
Excellent.
I wonder if you have concerns as you take this feedback, because as we've all said, this is pretty ambitious for the next 18 months, that this list will continue to grow beyond what is manageable. Are there some low-hanging things on here that you're going to try and chop off if a couple of other things make the list, or is it just going to continue to be added to the list?
Yeah, we're going to try to avoid adding if we can. I think one of the hardest things as town staff is to say no. If a board member is like, you should do this, this is a great idea. Our job is to say, yes, great, we'll make it happen. But our ask as staff is to really be able to kind of push back on the board and say, well, is that in your strategic plan? A bit of this, yes, and we'll do it in a year from now. Because I do think even myself as town administrator, we get very excited about all sorts of new things and then not recognizing the impact that has. We're practically fully staffed and have been in a great space staffing wise. Would like to keep it that way by not overburdening this team. But again, this list was prepared by our team. Our staff, our department heads are rallied behind this and saying, we can do this. But what we are also saying is, and please don't add more to this. Yeah. Like, this is doable to us, and we feel comfortable about, if not accomplishing all, definitely accomplishing 70-80% of it, and being able to provide the Board of Trustees and the community a very valid reason of why it didn't. And the answer can't just be, oh, I just didn't get to it. It's, hey, we ran into these barriers, and so this is getting adjusted in this way. It's just such a strong accountability tool, not only from town staff to the Board of Trustees, but just the town as a whole to the community.
One more thing, Jim, there was a strong caveat in the last DOT meeting that everything that's on here needs to tie to a line item in the budget. Otherwise, it's just nonsense. And then, yeah, one thing, Miranda, I would suggest, obviously we're knocking some of these off. I would have something at the end of each section for accomplished, and if we table something, drop that just so we can see what was tabled and we don't lose track of it.
Yeah, great.
Hey, very good. Good discussion. Any other comments? Otherwise, we'll keep looking it over. If you think of something, if you wake up at 2 in the morning and think of something, send that along.
Brandon, I had that experience last night, starting at 1:30 till about 3:15.
Yeah, well.
Some middle of the night emails last night.
Yeah.
We were thinking about the strategic plan. I'm excited.
Miranda, one term, rearrange time.
One term, what?
Rearrange time. If you're working at 3 in the morning, I hope you're taking some time off to compensate for that.
Wait, do I add that to the plan? Throw it in the strategic plan. Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, let's move on to informational items. This next one I'm particularly excited about. We talked, Miranda and I think Jim and I talked about increasing the communication between what's happening on the Board of Trustees versus what the Planning Commission is doing and what's coming up. And I think this is a great way to transfer the information. People can make plans if they want to attend a Board of Trustees meeting and so forth. So Miranda, why don't you introduce this?
Yeah. Thanks to ProSab. So we actually did a strategic planning session with ProSab and talked a lot about their role being advocates of what was happening within town. And it was like, well, how do we advocate if we have no idea what's coming before the Board of Trustees? And so I started creating this for ProSab and just thought, well, why wouldn't I do it for everyone? So it's now going to go to the DDA, ProSab, SAB, Planning Commission. So you all know, here's what's coming before the board. Caveat always, Board of Trustee agendas change even as close to 24 hours before the meeting. So this is my best stab as of last week about what is coming before the board. And it's also my own personal opinion about why I see a connection to the Planning Commission. So even if it's left blank, it doesn't mean I don't think the Planning Commission doesn't care about it. It's just that I'm not sure there's the immediate direct tie to the Planning Commission. So I just wanted to offer those two pieces. So looking at next week, August 1st, the first meeting of August for the board, it's a pretty light meeting. First thing is the Economic Vitality Grant. So the town has received this grant from Boulder County for the last 3 years, and every year have used it to create a grant program for businesses. The first year it was used to help them. We actually bought PPE. This was during COVID, so 2020. We bought PPE for businesses and gave it away, and also help them develop websites if they didn't have any sort of online presence, since that was so key during COVID. 2021, we did the same thing, but instead we just gave out money and said, hey, you go buy your own PPE and then just provide us with proof that you did so. And last year we actually opened it up even more that said, we're just going to give you money and you use it how you see fit. And so that could be anything from just covering your general operating expenses, like your bills or your rent. It could be for employee appreciation, especially for those who worked through the pandemic who are still with them, or to purchase PPE. After talking with the executive director of the DDA, really just felt like that was such a successful program. Let's go again. We actually asked for 30,000. They gave us 7. And it's just because they had more robust applications this year. 7 is better than nothing, but it does leave a smaller pot to go to the businesses. But what we do is we release an application and we just say, submit it. And depending on how many applications we get, we divide 7,000 by that many businesses. And it truly is just money to help them. So while I am sad it's less than normal, or less than we've done before, it is still money in a way the town can acknowledge our businesses and provide them with the financial means to continue to operate, even if it's just offsetting one bill. So just letting the board know we got that money, we're planning to do the same thing, and we'd like to release the applications in September. The only reason for that delay is Boulder County needs to give us the money first, so we have the money in hand before we, of course, start distributing funds we don't have. So we anticipate having that check from Boulder County sometime in August. Didn't see necessarily a direct tie to the Planning Commission, but very exciting thing happening. Action is the supplemental budget. So when we brought the compensation study before the Board of Trustees, it was going to require a supplemental budget to make adjustments in the salary line items. While we were at it, we also realigned the police department now that we have a contract with Boulder County Sheriff's Office. So just amending a few of those line items, increasing Boulder County Sheriff's Office coverage, but decreasing a lot of other line items such as salaries and direct expenses that we would have had we had our police department. The biggest thing here though is obviously staff. Really appreciative of the Board of Trustees recognizing how important staff are to what we do. There was a $209,000 pay gap between what staff do make right now and what they should be making. And the Board of Trustees made a major move by saying, yes, bring back the supplemental budget and let's correct that. Obviously, Britt is one of those individuals as our community planner who will see an increase under the supplemental budget, as well as other departments the Planning Commission works with. But you, of course, work most intimately with Britt, and I know she is newer into her role, but hit the ground running, has done an absolutely incredible job since day one and came in green. You know, Britt and I really took a chance together on this and recognizing that she didn't have background, but I just knew her hustle, her drive, her commitment to putting everything she can into all of her jobs. I watched her do it in utilities, and just knew she'd be an excellent fit for the community planner role. And I just think she's done an incredible job, deserves this raise coming for her. And in the compensation study, it also builds out a plan. It builds out how Britt wants to spend the next 10 years with us. She has a plan for how to make more money in that role and to stay here and to be a part of our community and not wonder from year to year, how much money could I make here? We've actually built out a minimum. So we're going to get people like Britt and other people to their minimum, but there's a mid-range, which is actually market rate. So even by going to the minimum, we're not quite at market rate. Work towards market rate, and then there's a maximum. So, you know, people, again, like Britt, just have this great range in which they can see their future. And the hope is that that helps a lot with retention, because someone knows what is capable of them financially speaking in these roles. And then, as you saw under our strategic plan, we're also going to invest heavily in staff and ensuring that, you know, Britt gets all the training she needs to be successful and can support the Plan Commission that much more. So excited for that to come. If approved, we are going to push forward the raises effective immediately, which means the pay period that the team is operating in, they will get those at their next pay. The last one, Board of Trustees has talked a bit about short-term rental code amendment and ways in which it can be tightened up. Planning Commission played a huge role in this when the ordinance was adopted in 2019. Years of work was done by the Planning Commission. Once implemented, though, we just recognize there's some things we need to tighten up. Some thoughts are putting a cap on short-term rental licenses. We're seeing a pretty significant spike in people coming forward for primary licenses, host not present. And we also feel like it's a bit too easy to get that type of license. You know, you just have to have your driver's license, have your address in Nederland, as well as an additional documents like a voter registration or motor vehicle record. Does that prove you live here? Who knows? You know, I just think that there's an opportunity to really tighten up that language. So working on that. And adding penalties. Macy has struggled with people not renewing their licenses on time, and there's really no kind of hit for doing so. You know, yes, we can do violation, but we'd like to not go so heavy-handed up front. We'd like to be able to maybe start with a fee and then work our way up to violation. And then the other thing is there is no penalty to operating without a license. And so we would like an opportunity to be able to bring forward some sort of penalty if we do find in our, Macy does monthly audits. In our monthly audit, if we find that you have a short-term rental that didn't have a license, that we could bring forward a penalty in addition to your registration fee. I'm just going to keep going, and then questions, if that's okay, Chair Williams, to the 15th?
No, I don't have any unless not anyone else does, but
I'm going to do one at a time, or do you want me to do the 15th really quick?
let's just do the 15th. And
Okay.
then
So the 15th, again, currently as it stands, a smaller agenda. We've got the peak-to-peak septic, cistern, and well variant. This actually just happened on the north side of town, and now on the south side of town, we're looking at another situation where the parcel is just too far from our service lines. And so we need to build a well and a septic, but under fire code, we're also requiring a septic system. Board of Trustees just approved one, again, on the north side of town as you head outside of town, over by Stinky Gulch, and then this one is on the south side. So those variances go directly to the Board of Trustees. Reason the Planning Commission might care is, of course, it's a development of currently a vacant parcel. They do understand they have to meet all other yard and bulk requirements. This just allows them to develop the lot from a utility standpoint. And then, as we mentioned, the strategic plan will come back before the Board of Trustees for adoption. And tonight we gathered feedback from you, but do encourage you to send more so that when they adopt this document, it is capturing all of the feedback from the boards and commissions. And so really the question is, do you have questions about what's coming before the Board of Trustees? Or I'm happy to talk future if you're wondering where something stands. But that is the next
question. Brenda, any feedback on SDR changes? What are you hearing something from the community?
Yes, we are hearing from the community concerns about how many short-term rentals are popping up.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of questioning about that primary resident host not present license type. You know, and it allows you to rent for 180 days, not there,
Mm-hmm.
but people question if it's really their primary home, or did they basically find a loophole and it's truly their secondary home, but they just changed their ID and changed their voter registration card to Nederland to get past the primary resident licensing requirement. And so really just recognizing that's always been maybe a bit too easy to do that. And we're just seeing a huge spike in those. And many are feeling as though they're secondary homes, but we don't have any proof because of the way our code is written. They technically satisfy the current language and code. And so definitely hearing that a ton in Big Springs, feeling like short-term rentals are kind of popping up all over. So yeah, we do feel like one of the ways to get ahead of that, one of the quickest ways, is to just put a cap and then go into a lottery system and say, we're capping it at where we are today. And if someone falls off and they give up their license, then there's a kind of a bidding war for that license. And that's what many communities have done when they felt like, even though they had regulations, it was still allowing a lot of short-term rental registrations, that the cap was the next way to go.
Well, that's intriguing. It puts a value on something that's undervalued.
Yeah. I mean, when the short-term rental license or the regulation first came forward, we had over 100 short-term rentals, and a lot of them were secondary homes, and that dropped that down pretty quickly. I think it was like 104 to 30, but I think we're back up in the 70s now. So it worked for a little while until I think people realized maybe that language related to primary resident host not present wasn't as strong as it could have been.
Well, maybe
This
tightening
will
up the
continue.
language would help with that.
Right.
Or,
Okay.
going back and looking at the original planning commission proposal, which did get modified once it went to the BOT and became, I think, more flexible and more lenient. But if I recall, the original planning commission recommendation was significantly more restrictive, under the thinking that, hey, if this doesn't work out, we can always, or if this is too strict, we can always open this up further. It's easy to make regulations more relaxed, but as we're seeing now, obviously it's very difficult to roll them back. Right. And so our original, I don't remember the exact language, it's been years now, but I do recall that, and Roger, you have a better memory for these things than I do. So, but I do wonder if it's worth it to go back and actually look at that. And before we go to the lottery system, to look at the Planning Commission's original recommendation. Just a thought.
Know what year that packet, and maybe Roger, you jump in, but what year I should be digging at that packet?
I think that was around 2019, if I recall.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel like it was. But whenever the BOT made their vote was significant, like it was maybe 9 months, almost a year, maybe
Yeah, it was
after
a
we
while
did our
afterwards,
recommendation.
right.
There's a pretty big delta in there.
Yep.
Okay.
But ours, it did get relaxed significantly from what the Planning Commission had originally recommended.
Okay.
So just a thought.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Thank you. And that's actually what we were trying to, and myself and Macy weren't around, and then I came right at the time it was getting adopted. So I was like, all right, here we go. Yeah, I mean, it's a tricky point to exactly what you're saying. It's like Macy's getting, she feels like 2 to 3 short-term rental applications a week. I mean, they're just rolling in quickly. And so we are about, people are, and then we're getting the complaints that come shortly after that of, well, is this even legal? But we've definitely seen a spike over the last couple, and that's not since she's been here, but that's over the last couple of months. We've seen a spike in short-term rentals. We've also seen a spike in short-term rentals being rented without being registered and having to do a lot of work in the audit side of it, of trying to, when you see them in Airbnb world, it doesn't tell you where they're at. So we have to do a ton of work with code enforcement and other people to try to track down where are these houses, and then try to get contact information for these individuals. And a lot of calls to the hosting site saying, hey, these are illegal listings, but it is a ton of work done by the clerk to try to regulate what's happening in the short-term rental world.
Are the fees that we're getting compensating us for the amount of time she's investing in this?
No, I mean, Macy made a joke the other day. She's like, I need a deputy just for short-term rentals. I mean, it is a substantial amount of time she spends on short-term rentals, because not only your short-term rentals, it's also now your occupational tax, tracking down your occupational tax, making sure that you're paying in accordance with the new ordinance language of $4 per night per room, and seeing people trying to get a little tricky with that of like debating us on whether something is a bedroom or not, so they don't have to pay. It's tough. It's a basically dreads kind of entering what we joke is short-term rental world. It is very challenging.
Jim, you had a comment?
Yeah, I do want to just mention that, and I don't know if personally if this is out there, but I think there must be some kind of a third-party entity that can help with some of that enforcement. I know some folks in town that took the 45-day rule pretty seriously initially, and they've said, well, there's no enforcement. So they've just kind of said, we're just going to wait and see what happens if we get caught, because we kind of need the income. And I've heard that more than once. So I'm going to say that I think that between one, putting fees that are, prohibitive, I think if you're going to take that and take a possible rental resource out of our community, maybe the fee should be a lot. Maybe it should be $2,500. Maybe it should be $5,000. And then I would love to see some kind of an action plan for enforcement. And maybe that plan is looking for a third-party agency to help with enforcement, because I know we can't be the first town that's dealing with this. And so it might be worthwhile to say, okay, we're going to increase fees and we're going to send this off to another entity to help, so that doesn't tie up our town staff with something that's going to, and then maybe that third party entity gets paid based on the amount of revenue that they bring in. Or I'm not sure how that all works, but I got to believe there's something else than tying up, our deputy clerk, our clerk, not deputy clerk, with, this kind of action. And I will tell you that I've heard from at least 3 different people in town that they feel like there's no enforcement. So they'll just wait and see what happens when and if they get caught.
I can say spill some secrets here, but I can say 2 things. Yes, we already have a third-party vendor. They're all called close compliance, but we didn't opt to use all of their services when we first enrolled with them, because it was like, oh, we're probably going to have a handful, right? It's like, we don't need that. However, even if we did have their full package, what is challenging is nobody can determine days rented. There's no system in the world that can determine days rented. What happens is they can tell you how many times it was rented in a month based on reviews. So you have 6 reviews, it was rented 6 times. Well, we can't tell you in those 6 times, was it rented 1 day? Was it rented 5 days? Was it rented 20 days? So it gets tricky. So we operate on the best system we can. And we actually do have a tracker where every quarter when the occupational tax comes in, we are able to determine based off occupational tax payment, how many days were rented. And people who get close will hear from Macy, but no one is close enough yet to warrant the hours. There's 2 that are close, but not at capacity yet. But they would get a message from Macy saying, hey, you've reached your number. But that is the challenge, is we don't truly know, and we've asked multiple systems out there. There's no way for them to know, because they don't have access to the back end Airbnb VRBO data. They only know that, yes, your home has been rented at least X amount of times in a month. So it's tough. So that's why days rented is not the greatest way to go. And a lot of communities don't do days rented because that is next to impossible. And they just put caps. They say you can have 10 secondary homes, you can have 15 primary homes, host not present, and 20 or no cap on primary resident host present, because that controls it better than us trying to figure out how many days did you rent, whether it's us or a third party. They're going to have just as many challenges in that spectrum of days rented, that perhaps days rented, well, great in kind of theory, is not actually workable when we try to truly execute it. Because your example of that 45-day person, we might have only seen that they've rented 5 times. So they may have rented 5 times for 3 days at a time, but we have no idea. So we would count it as 5 days rented, because we don't know.
Well, it sounds like we need to relook at how we're doing that. And I'm going to say that maybe there wasn't an entity. I find it surprising that the the agency, VRBO and Airbnb aren't willing to, to give some info. I mean, it could be that they're not doing that on purpose, but I think there might, it might be worth seeking out, maybe talking to some of the other communities that have tackled this recently and seeing, hey, is there some new entities out there that are tracking this better, or is there new ways that we can tackle this? Because again, I don't think anything we're dealing with is new. Some other community has already been dealing with it ahead of us.
Timmy,
But I know it takes work.
Into the text window. But Miranda, you were just down for a CML meeting. I would imagine, was this a topic that people talked about?
It was not, but it is a well-discussed topic in the clerk world.
Yeah.
And so Macy is drafting the AIM, and I haven't seen her draft yet, but she's got a ton of data, to Vice Chair Reese's point. And actually, we use Granicus. Host Compliance is our vendor, Commissioner Dye, and they're incredible. And everybody, just about everybody uses them, but they have limitations. Now they're amazing. They're the reason we know that there's illegal listings. I mean, they pop up in our world, and they're amazing in so many different ways. It's the days rented that a lot of communities have just gotten away from because there's just no way to do that. And Timmy, you need to press *6 to unmute. You had background noise, so I muted you for you. So press *6. I'm technically not supposed to have the chat up. So, and people can't see the chat after the fact. So Timmy, I can either read it, or if you press *6.
Better read it then.
Yeah.
So Timmy says, don't think my audio is working. In my experience in real estate, many communities, Idaho Springs, for example, are putting cap on the number of short-term rentals. And that's Macy's experience as well. It's the majority. And that I think a much more expensive fee to obtain a license in the first place could help. But I think, Timmy, you're off mute now. Sorry about that.
Can you guys hear me now?
We do.
Okay, sorry, I'm sitting in my car in a parking lot at the bottom of Coal Creek Canyon right now on my cell phone. But yeah, thanks, Miranda, for relaying what I texted there. Yeah, I don't really have too much more to say, but yeah, I think additional regulation on the short-term rentals could be something to discuss here. And it was encouraging to hear the initial reaction with our regulation going from 70 something down to 30. That's great, and what you would hope and expect. But yeah, it's also interesting that it's creeping back up.
Yeah, I agree. And I, as the new clerk, as the clerk who implemented short-term rental back in the day, I knew early on primary resident, host not present wasn't strong. I was like, oh, that seems a little loophole-y. Handled it pretty well. I mean, it was just fine, but Macy has just seen this rapid spike, and that's been tough. The other thing we want to talk about too, and I forgot to mention, is LLCs. Whether or not an LLC can be an owner of a short-term rental. So how we handle it now, since the code isn't clear, is that if you come to us and your property is registered in an LLC, you need to provide us proof of documentation that you're a registered agent of that LLC. And then that your license and your other primary documentation matches that address. People have questioned, though, is an LLC, if it's an LLC, do you again really live there? Or did you figure out a kind of a way through that primary resident host not present license?
All right. Well, anyway, I'd like to second Stephanie's suggestion to go back and let's look at our original, wording, verbiage, and, see if that will help the Board of Trustees. And thank you for putting this together. I assume every month you will put this into so we know what's coming up.
Yes, but always stay tuned to Civic Web to see what actually ends up on the board's agenda. But this is the plan, and I will bring this to you every month with the meetings between your planning commission now and your next one. So it may have 3 meetings based on, again, the forecaster, but just really that caveat of things are always subject to change. And even this one, short-term rental, Macy and I may dive into it a little more and move it to the 15th because we want to make sure we bring the best aim forward as possible. Based on your feedback, it may be in our best interest to just delay it slightly so we make sure we've captured everything.
One
Okay.
last question on this topic before we move on, but do you have even an informal estimate or guesstimate on how many host not present short-term rentals we've got? Legal or
Yeah, I
illegal?
actually just pulled up the spreadsheet to see if 70 was right, and yes, it would be, the number Reeves Macy just issued was it's a license number of 72, and of the primary resident host not present, we have. Sorry, give me 2 seconds. I can pull this up pretty quick. There's a couple expire, but we're probably looking at about 20.
Okay.
There are a lot more new ones in the central business district, which have 365-day rentals. And we saw a huge spike in those as well, which I don't know if a lot of people have concerns about that, but we did see that increase. And I'm not sure we have exactly 70 because we have quite a few inactives. We're probably looking at maybe a closer total of 55. So 20 of those 55 are host not present license.
So that's about 8% of our residential structures.
Yeah.
That we're pretty sure, and there's a whole lot of iffies on top of that. So it's significant.
It is.
Okay.
Right. Thank you. All right. Miranda, let's move on to last but not least.
Hey, can I just real quick just say this is extremely helpful, Miranda. I always try to make the time to see what's coming up if there's something on the next meeting. This is going to be really helpful for all the members to see if there's something that ties into the Planning Commission. So thank you for adopting this new agenda matrix. Thank you.
Yes, of course.
I would like to also, Miranda, when I first started the Planning Commission, that I jumped right into the short-term rental discussions. So that might help with the date that you're looking for.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and I will tell you, I'm tentatively leaning towards maybe adjusting when this comes before the board, and it would still come in August, but probably on the 15th, because I don't want to present an ordinance that doesn't honor, or an aim that doesn't honor all the work of the Planning Commission. So I really appreciate all this feedback.
So,
And I agree with what Stephanie stated, that we were a little more strict, and then it became a little less so as it went forward.
Tom, do you think this would come back to the Planning Commission at some point after a discussion at the Board of Trustees?
Yes, I know you're asking Tom, but maybe I could just jump in.
Okay.
Technically, obviously, with it being Chapter 6, it doesn't have to, but one of the recommendations Macy and I were making is that this does come back to the Planning Commission, since you were the original body assigned to work on this. And we're just asking the Board of Trustees, we're even just asking the Board of Trustees to work on this. We're basically exposing the challenges and saying, you know, do you give us the authority to dive into this more with Planning Commission and legal, of course.
Okay. Good. All right. Thanks, everyone. So let's go to our last item, town staff reports. If you want to do a brief overview of it, that's fine. Pick out the key points that you want to make, and everyone else can read.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Throwing them all in again so you can enjoy them all. Always like to start with the shout outs. Just a huge kudos to Ryan LaForge and Chris Caligaris, who received more certifications. If anyone's familiar with water and wastewater, you have to become certified as you go forward, and there's 4 certification levels per distributions, collections, water, and wastewater. And so those 2 have completed all 4 of their initial certs. Chris just celebrated his year. Ryan's been with us about 6 months. So really appreciate that they prioritize that. And it just helps to have that much more advanced operators. And then Chris is now our lead, laboratory lead, and Ryan is taking on a maintenance lead. And this just allows us to focus time and attention. But there was a great 4th of July parade, some work to be done. We did not go around twice, and definitely will next year. But just a big shout out to the whole public works team, as well as the town hall staff who worked on that. Talk a little bit about downtown wayfinding. We met with Merge, who's the representative working on wayfinding, and Mayor Pro Tem Behold joined us on that tour, where we just talked about where will signage go. And that's set to come before the DDA for vote, and then hopefully sign installation here in early next year. I attended the CML conference with Mayor Billy and put my sessions that I attended in the packet. So if you have questions, you can ask me. Rita's financials are in here. Always good to look at that. But one thing that's really cool is the marijuana tax. So if you recall, we asked the voters to have a 5% marijuana tax for to go towards the Parks Department, and we estimated that for the year the budget would be 30,000 in revenue, and we're already at 22,659, and that's as of June. So going to surpass what we budgeted, and that's a healthy revenue stream for the Parks Department. Britt has been working with the pump track team. So as you know, ProSap came forward. So just continuing to evaluate their location and working on the design for that. And then of course, she's been working with keeping animals. Public Works has been busy, as Vice Chair Reese noted. Summertime is the time you see them everywhere. So Parks is working really hard on finishing the Barker Meadow Parks grant, as well as working on flipping the rink from the ice skating rink to the tennis pickleball courts, which has had some complexities, but definitely working towards that. Doing a lot of hydrant flushing. One cool new thing is we actually ended up finding a non-emergency version of Everbridge, so we can text you. So when we're in your area, say we're in Big Springs, we're going to shoot you a text message if you have your phone number registered with your utilities account that says, hey, we're flushing hydrants, your water might be brown, we just want to let you know. So we can do a lot more engagement that way. So if your phone number is not associated with your account, we encourage you to do that. Hopefully you all got your mailer for the annual water quality report. I just really appreciate that Andrew Bliss, our utilities manager, did a more humanized version of the report. So introduced you to the team, talked to you about our water, shared with you about our operations, and then you got the report. And so it wasn't just like, hey, here's a report and here's no background. We wanted to give that additional information. Streets Department received a couple of their new pieces of equipment. They got their flatbed truck and their grader. You may know that the Board of Trustees approved about $511,000 in a loan for us to get new equipment. So the last thing we're waiting on is the water truck. But this equipment has allowed us to do more roadway work. However, if you haven't seen on social media, we did a love-hate relationship with the rain post. Just, of course, we love the rain. We love the rain from a wildfire standpoint, but it is challenging for Streets Department. So just wanted to educate the community on some of the challenges Streets faces when it does rain. So go take a look at that fun post that Peter put together. Troy is still working on emergency operations plan, but he's enrolling in a National Emergency Management Academy in September, which will help just continue to give him the skills and tools to be a successful emergency manager. Community center is just booming. There's a lot happening there, so very busy if you get to visit. And then from kind of a zero waste standpoint, we're seeing we have a ride and drive EV event on September 17th. Where at the farmers market you could drive an EV vehicle, and so the point is to just give experience in doing so. So encourage people to attend that. And then lastly, Peter's doing a lot through Engage Nederland. If you haven't had a chance to see our engagement platform called Engage Nederland, I would encourage you to check that out and just keep working on community outreach and engagement. Really trying to be very communicative on Facebook. If we post and someone comments, we're trying to have back and forth conversations to the best of our ability and really utilize those platforms for a two-way communication. And then he ends his report with like all the incredible events that are coming forward. There was the circus, obviously, last week and the Party in the Peaks, but a lot of new things happening. And next year, Nederland turns 150 years old. So working on that planning as a Netter Day event. And that's some highlights from the staff report.
Oh, great. Thank you. Any questions? Okay, thanks for putting that together as usual. And let's see, any other business we need to bring up? Anybody?
No other business, but I would like to thank Jim Reese and the crew for mowing the cemetery. It looks really, really good. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Jim.
You. Okay. With that, thanks everyone for putting up with a remote meeting tonight. We'll meet in person next month, right?
Good.
And do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Accepted? Second? Jim?
I second.
I think Jim beat you this time.
Okay.
Okay. Fred?
Commissioner Dye,
Yes?
Commissioner Rivera. Not sure if he ever joined.
I think you could just do all in favor, Britt.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, all in
Yeah.
favor?
Yay.
Yay.
Yeah.
All opposed?
Adios at 8:58.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thank
And
you.
we'll see next month.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Enjoy every day of summer.
That's right. Enjoy summer. It's short.
Thanks
Okay.
for your good work, staff. Great job.
Good night.
Thank you.